This past weekend, Zack Snyder's Justice League debuted on HBO Max, and it gave us a whole new look at our Justice League. So today I'm going to stop and rank all 12 DCEU heroes from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 12 DCEU heroes. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours.
There can be only one.
Also, along those same lines, there's nothing magical about the 12 people that I selected. There's a lot of wiggle room because of the Suicide Squad. I didn't include them because, by their inherent nature, they are villains. I did include the Birds of Prey. If you want to include more or less, that's up to you, and let's get started. Coming in last place is the Huntress. Now, I think this is a character whose backstory has a lot of potential to be very interesting. I enjoy Mary Elizabeth Winstead as an actress, but I think that she was horribly miscast in this role and found her to be totally unconvincing.
Not impressed.
Both in the performance, the voice that she uses, as well as her physicality throughout the film. I just did not believe that she was this vigilante out for revenge against people, and therefore she comes in last place. Coming in at number 11 is Flagg from Suicide Squad. Now, from my perspective, Amanda Waller in that film is a villain, and of course the main members of the Suicide Squad are villains forced to do something heroic, but Flagg is a heroic military man on this mission, therefore qualifies as a hero. Unfortunately, in this film, I found him to be a very ineffective hero. Both from the setup of the film with what goes down with the Enchantress and her origin story, as well as Flagg's actions throughout the film. He's there, he is in theory a good guy trying to save his girlfriend from what happened to her, but he's not particularly interesting. He's not particularly good at what he's trying to do in the context of this film.
Oh, that didn't work.
So unfortunately, while I enjoy Joel Kinnaman as an actor, he didn't necessarily do anything wrong with his performance, but in the writing, there's just nothing there to make him pop, interesting, or a great character. Bringing us into the top 10 is Montoya from Birds of Prey. The character as portrayed here is a hard-drinking rogue cop who has to team up with a group of anti-heroes to bring down a crime lord. It's a bit of a cliche journey for this type of character, but really kind of the reason the character's low on this list is because the Birds of Prey themselves are side characters in their own film, because the lead was Harley Quinn, and thus she got all the screen time.
Wow, that was weird.
So then our Birds of Prey kind of only got minimal backstory to be developed. I don't actually have a particularly big problem with what they did with Montoya. She just didn't get the development she needed to be higher up on this list. Next up is Black Canary from Birds of Prey. Much like Montoya, this is a character that I don't have any particular problems with. I think there is a lot of potential with the idea of this character that's not really looking to be a hero, but wants to do the right thing, thus gets pushed into being in the Birds of Prey. But because Harley Quinn got all the screen time, that meant that the Birds of Prey didn't get the development they needed to be more interesting and higher up on this list once again. Number 8, Harley Quinn. Now, in Suicide Squad, of course, she was a villain forced to do heroic things, but throughout the course of her journey in Birds of Prey, she does end up teaming up with the Birds of Prey of her own volition to do some good things, though not entirely for the most altruistic reasons. Of course, Harley Quinn inherently is a fun, enjoyable character being played by a charismatic, world-class actress in Margot Robbie, but part of what makes her so much fun in these films is that you have someone that is a psycho that's written to have just enough to be sympathetic for this journey that she's on, and she's someone that in the middle of a fight scene doing crazy stuff can snort cocaine.
I do cocaine!
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
But then also helps the girl, goes on this journey to do some heroic things by the end of the film. It's an interesting journey and a very different type of character to be put in that sort of role. Next up, The Flash. This is one of the characters most aided by Zack Snyder's Justice League. In the theatrical cut of the film, he's written to be quirky and kind of funny, but not remotely heroic. Every time he almost did something heroic, they undercut it for the purpose of a joke. They establish he's afraid of bugs.
See, I'm afraid of bugs.
And then in the first sequence where he's doing action, he trips and falls into Wonder Woman's boobs because Joss Whedon thought that was funny. And then when we get to the finale of the film, they decided the most important thing he would do is push a car to get people out of town. And then he looks over, and even that is undermined for a joke to show just how much better Superman than him. Zack Snyder fixed all of this, and they made him an actually heroic character with a backstory that saved people before he was recruited by Batman. And then when we get into the finale, he gets this amazing sequence where he ends up turning back time, running into a world-destroying explosion, rewriting the past with each step that he takes. It's one of the most epic scenes in any superhero movie of all time. And Joss Whedon thought, you know what's better than that? What if he pushed a car? The reason he's a little bit lower on the list is because he hasn't necessarily gotten an arc yet. He hasn't had a big journey. We got some backstory, some great moments, much improved character, but doesn't necessarily have a specific arc that he's been on throughout these films yet. At number 6 is Batman. Now, Batman is one of my top 2 favorite superheroes of all time. And unfortunately, in the DCEU, he's been used in kind of a weird way because he's introduced in Batman v Superman at a point in time where he's just driven by rage. So we see kind of the worst version of him, this angry version of him that's using guns and mowing guys down and trying to kill Superman. And then he gets this great redemptive arc in Zack Snyder's Justice League where he's trying to undo the mistakes that he made in that film. The piece that's missing, though, is that we never got to see normal Batman, before he was driven mad by the events of Man of Steel, which I think if we got that, he'd probably move way up on this list. I like the idea of seeing this version of Batman that is not his normal self, that Alfred is trying to talk him off the cliff of going to war with this character that he does not know if he's actually a bad guy or not. There's some great dialogue with him. Of course, the warehouse scene is the most visceral, brutal Batman action we've ever seen on the big screen. And then this seeing just as dedicated of a Bruce Wayne in Justice League trying to bring the team together. Very cool stuff that I thoroughly enjoyed. But we've never seen just normal Batman. In 5th place is Cyborg, another character that got a dramatic bump by Zack Snyder's Justice League. In the theatrical cut, all of his backstory was plucked out, all of his character arc with his father removed from the story, and he was used basically just as a plot device at certain points in time with no context for his actions for any of them to have any emotional weight. And then you watch Zack Snyder's Justice League, and that's all put back in. And everything that he does throughout the whole film carries so much weight for the story, as well as the emotional energy and flow of the film, and then for his character arc in general. At the core of the film is so much his relationship with his father and him learning to accept who he is and what his father did. You see their relationship being mended and the choices his father makes and what that does for him in his journey of realizing, I have a place in this world. I'm not alone. I'm not a monster. I'm a hero that belongs on this team. And it's just so satisfying as that pays off in the 3rd act of the film. Then we have Wonder Woman. She first showed up in Batman v Superman. While she's not a big part of that film, every time she was on screen, she captured your attention. And of course, as you moved into the fight with Doomsday, it was awesome to finally see her in action. But where she really kind of made her mark was when her first film came out. And Gal Gadot was just so charming. She was confident, strong, but had a naivety at the same time. She was a warrior who was brave, but she had a femininity to her at the same time. And then she had amazing chemistry with Chris Pine that just created this captivating character who was learning what the real world was like. And in fact, I used to have her at number 1 on this list because she was so compelling in Wonder Woman. But I think her character was really hurt by Wonder Woman 1984, which sees her 60 years later still hung up on Steve Trevor.
You've made a huge mistake.
And instead of moving the character forward, they just have her looking backward. And I think that really hurts the character. I understand that there's value in having important relationships that still matter to her decades later, but that's not the same thing as what they did in 1984. And I really think it hurt the character instead of building her up to taking her to the next level. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to share your ranking down below in the comment section. Remember, my list Whether my ranking or the list of characters I picked is not the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. Also, I've done a bunch of these DCEU and DC rankings before. I've ranked the movies, the villains, my favorite moments from each film, the final battles, all of that fun stuff. You can check it out right up here in this playlist. If you love DC content, check it out right up there when this video is over. In third place is Shazam. Now, I went into this movie expecting to have a good time. Zachary Levi seemed like the perfect choice to play this child that has turned into a superhero in a man's body. He just captures childlike energy so well. But what this movie really excelled at and what surprised me is that it's a movie all about family. And at its core, it's about Billy finding his new home, and it develops that both when he's in Billy mode and then in the finale in Shazam mode. Both levels, it develops that out and helps him find the place where he belongs. And I think that was a very profound, compelling arc. And the whole thing was really funny and fun and a different type of hero where it is kind of like Big turned into a superhero movie. The nature of the character, the performance, the character arc, and the focus on family, all of that makes him one of the most interesting characters in the genre. Our runner-up is Aquaman. Now, independent from these movies, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a gigantic fan of Aquaman, but in the DCEU, he's one of the characters that they've given a very distinct arc. He's just a character that's first introduced as this rogue guy that wants to do the right thing but doesn't know his place in this world because he's torn between two different worlds and two different paths for him. And this is explored. He's taken on that journey all throughout the film Aquaman, where he must accept his true legacy and dynasty. The movie itself might have big, flashy, bright colors, occasional pop songs that are misplaced, but at its core, you kind of have this Shakespearean drama taking place about who is the proper king and who's stepping in, battles to see who will dominate the throne, all building towards this gigantic battle where Aquaman leads the charge to take his place. So put it all together, and he's a character that wouldn't immediately jump out at me as being a top character, but they've actually given him a compelling arc. But coming in first place is Superman. Now, Superman is one of my favorite superheroes of all time, and in the DCEU, we've seen Zack Snyder's alternate take on the Superman mythology that does elements of deconstruction while also taking him through this full hero's journey. He has an origin story. He has to fight through understanding his place in this world. He has a death, he has a resurrection, and he comes back as the hero that saves the world. You get all of it throughout this trilogy of Zack Snyder films that he's given us. Now, it's very different from the traditional take on the character. Certain iconic elements aren't present, but if you take this version on its own face value, what Zack Snyder's trying to do rather than judging it based off mythology past, I think there's a lot of great, compelling stuff here. And for me, especially by the time we got to the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League and you have a complete trilogy with a single voice telling the story, it's very compelling stuff that is what superhero stories are all about. They're supposed to be modern mythology, and this version of Superman is exactly that. So he comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it, remember that I've got that playlist right over there with my other DCEU rankings as well as DC rankings. Got the Batman movies, Superman movies, DCU films, DCU final battles, all that fun stuff right over there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.